Last month, a 2-year-old in Colorado came home from daycare and threw up. And for those of you who've had children, you know that's not unusual. But his mom noticed a berry or a grape or something, and she didn't think he'd had anything like that day. So she called the daycare. Only then did they mention that wild grapes were growing on the playground. And yes, they'd seen him eat a few earlier that day. In a panic, she called Poison Control, who are wonderful. But the grape family contains over 900 species of plants. And they could only help if they knew which one he had eaten. There aren't many options when a person is in this situation. You can go to the emergency room and bring the plant and hope that it's actually one of the ones that's so fatal the doctors are familiar with it, which is unlikely. But she didn't have the plant, and it was 9 p.m., and she had a crying 2-year-old at home. And in the US, an ER visit can cost thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. And what if it really was just a wild grape? You could also send a picture to a horticultural or botanical society, a professional association. The North American Mycological Association would like you to know that they have mycologists you can email in every state. You can also get in touch with a government agricultural agency or a professor at a university. If you know any of those things, if you know who might be able to help you and who might be awake and how to get their contact info. But by now, it was so late, no one would be in their office. And when doctors try to get in touch with agricultural agencies, they often don't hear back for days. It turns out that this is a real crack that people fall through. There are some 700 species of plants in America that can kill you. And a full 3% of poisonings are plant-related. But it's not like hospitals keep botanists on staff just for things like this that happen. And so, at 9 p.m., Poison Control told her to post in a Facebook group called Poison's Help, Emergency Identification for Mushrooms and Plants. Has anyone heard of this group? Ooh, I'm so excited. You're all going to go home after this and subscribe. Because ordinarily, crowdsourcing solutions on Facebook is iffy at best. Consider the popular group, What Is This Thing?, where people post pictures of objects that they don't recognize, and where 2 days ago, members of the general public incorrectly identified a squid fishing jig as an orange juicer, a chimney cleaner, a hay bale handle, which I don't think exists, a knitting tool, and a back scratcher. Don't. Yesterday, a single wooden object was identified by various people as being a biscuit cutter, a tool for darning socks, a butter mold, a pill crusher, and a finial for a curtain rod. And we still don't know what it is. But the Poison's Help group is different. There, the only people who are allowed to comment are a select group of experienced botanists and mycologists, so that's plant experts and mushroom experts from around the world whose credentials have been verified. Collectively, they speak dozens of languages. Because of translation software, you can post in any language, and they will try to help. These are experts in their fields. And so, at 9:48 p.m. Colorado time, the mom posted a picture that she'd finally gotten from the daycare provider, taken in the dark, of a dead vine with a few crumpled brown leaves clinging to a chain link fence. Less than 1 minute later, at 9:49 p.m., a botanist in the Philippines correctly identified it, not as a wild grape, but as a Parthenocissus, which contains oxalic acids that cause kidney damage and death. The child is fine. He's fine. In fact, hundreds of people are fine and alive after having run-ins with poison hemlock and destroying angel mushrooms and getting the right medical attention because of this group. If I've learned anything from being part of this group, it's that mushrooms aren't nearly as dangerous as many of us think, The deadliest ones you can still chew up, spit out, and be fine, but if you look at a wild carrot for too long, you can end up on an organ transplant list. I've never been so afraid of carrots before. When an admin in this group sends out an alert to the proper team, members have been known to stop walking on city streets or stop teaching class at a university, take out their phones and look immediately. They operate 24 hours a day and they don't get paid. Now, I subscribe to the group because I think mushrooms are cool and I enjoy drama. I should look into that. But as a religious person, it's their generosity of spirit that has stuck with me. Perhaps because we live in such a capitalist society. When 3 horses died after being moved to a new pasture, the admins scoured photographs of 17 acres worth of plants, including crops planted on nearby farms, analyzing what pesticides might have been used and drifted over to try to save the rest of the horses. When immigrants in Florida went foraging for mushrooms that looked like the ones from back home and wound up with liver failure, an entire family, the admins stayed online for hours with the ER doctors as paramedics raced back to the neighborhood to find samples. What motivates someone to help others, sometimes anonymously, sometimes at great distance, across species even, for arguably nothing material in return, sometimes not even a thank you? It's sometimes said that by reading books about manners from centuries past, you can find out how people really behaved by what the etiquette manuals tell them not to do. Because otherwise they wouldn't have to say it, right? Like when a book from the 1500s tells dinner guests that it's just unacceptable and rude to pick your teeth with a table knife, you know someone was doing it, right? For a lot of people, it must have been acceptable. And so I'm not sure what to make of the fact that all the major religions lift up generosity as something people should do. Maybe I'm a little suspicious. Should we focus on the fact that it seems to be universally valued among humans, giving of ourselves, or the fact that if we have to be told, it might not be a universal behavior among humans? Oh no. We know that the rich are less likely to be generous than the poor who have less. And not just in terms of money, but in terms of time and concessions to other people. We know that drivers of BMWs, for example, are less likely to let pedestrians cross the street. And admins from the Poisons Help group frequently wind up getting burnt out and having to take leaves of absence, not because of how many people are in liver failure and how terrifying these cases are, no, but because of the sheer number of posts every minute and every hour from Americans demanding to know what mushroom their dog was standing next to, demanding that it be treated as an emergency. After being told, well, if your dog didn't eat it, it's not an emergency, changing the story and saying maybe he did eat some. Can you identify it now? Americans refusing to state what country they're from because there is only one country. Or only giving a 2-letter state code like PA, which could be Palau for all the mycologists in the Philippines know. Or a zip code, which is less helpful. Refusing to use the word dog, which can be translated by software, and instead referring to their miniature golden doodles. All of which confound mushroom experts in Hungary or South Korea who rely on translation software to help. And when asked to please try a little harder, they get angry. It seems that privilege and entitlement might be barriers not just to performing generosity for others, but barriers to appreciating it, what is done for us. Let me pause here to say, this is not an indictment of privileged people, but of capitalism and a stratified society, a system that separates the privileged from human goodness, theirs and others, just as it separates the poor from mercy and compassion. In turn, it is empathy, mercy, and compassion that motivate generosity, our understanding that every person is a galaxy of experiences and irreplaceable otherness that we can never fully know, but we honor in turn because we know what we contain inside us. Now, it's true that sometimes people carry out generosity for selfish or manipulative reasons, but hear me out. If you find yourself second-guessing why you perform generosity, it's good to be self-aware and reflective, but don't overthink it. Often, if you're wondering that about yourself, you're fine. Don't overthink it. If sharing what you have and reaching out to others makes you feel good, it's because we are a social species, meant to live in community, and you have the same instincts as a bird who uses the magnetic poles to fly north in the spring. Consider that in modern society, where every interaction with a corporation involves being manipulated somehow, we can become suspicious of kindness and generosity to the point of questioning even our own motivations. Because capitalism would have us believe that nobody would do anything, unless they were getting something out of it. I'm here to say that feeling good about yourself is not an unethical form of profit. You're allowed to do nice things for people and feel happy. Perhaps the harder thing to internalize is that when you're the recipient of others' care and generosity, you're allowed to accept it and be happy. I also want to say that generosity does not mean giving until it hurts. The admins of the Poisons Help Group take shifts, rotating off of active duty, as it were, to preserve their own well-being. They have good boundaries. Boundaries that allow them to give safely and sustainably. And our religion, Unitarian Universalism, does not ask you to endanger or injure yourself for the greater good. Our collective well-being includes you. Yes, you. The Reverend Catherine Clarenbach says, it's not possible to volunteer at church, any more than you can volunteer to do the dishes at your own home, because the church is yours. And we all pitch in, being generous with time, talents, and resources to the extent that we can do so joyfully and still be well. No church worth belonging to would ask anyone to subsume themselves in its maintenance. The church is a net, and we each take turns falling into it, just as we take turns holding up one side, mending tears, or providing extra thread. I will say that pledge drive season is a good time to think about whether you're holding up your corner as much as you could. Or, just the same, if this is a year that you need some time to lay down and be held up by the net. It's worth noting that the admins of Poisons Help overwhelmingly have jobs. That means no one is going to get evicted from their apartment because they gave of themselves to the international mushroom identification community to the point that they couldn't pay rent. They're able to give generously of their time because they are compensated fairly elsewhere. And I wonder, in modern America, how many of us wish we could serve our communities in other ways, give to our churches in other ways, and spend more time on our niche hobbies, but we can't because we work long hours or multiple jobs or simply don't have the resources. If it seems like the people around you are choosing to be uncharitable or callous towards others or uncaring, consider that maybe they're not making choices. Maybe they don't have choices. And again, we have to be careful not to confuse capitalism with human nature. I'll say that again. Be careful not to confuse capitalism, the water in which we swim, with honest human nature. I believe that most people want to be generous and good, whatever that means. The hardest question a congregant ever asked me was why. Why should I be good? Jason asked. At the time, I was caught off guard, and I said, well, I guess you don't have to. Oh, I know that, he said, which did slightly alarm me, though I admired his moxie. But why should I, he asked. And I responded, because I was stalling, let me look into this. Don't do anything bad for now. That conversation was 5 years ago, and I trust he is still on his own spiritual recognizance. Philosophers talk about this all the time, and they haven't stopped talking about it. Is it because we understand consequences, that our behavior has a real effect on the world? And we want our overall impact to be a positive one, to increase the net good in the world, as it were? Or is it because of a sense of duty, of what we owe one another? And let me pause and say, sometimes Unitarians are afraid of obligation, but we do owe each other something, do we not?
Indeed.
We're in community. Or do we want to be good because of who we want to be as people, or because of what we want to do? It would not be Unitarian Universalist of me to give you an answer, and so I must decline. But I invite you all to think about it, to think about why should you be good and generous? You're on your own spiritual recognizance for as long as necessary, at least until I have left the building. How are you generous? How are you really generous? Not just in terms of what you buy and spend and give financially. How have you helped strengthen the community around you? How have you benefited from others' generosity, even if you yourself have plenty of money? How has your well-being from accepting that generosity strengthened the community around you? One of the mycologists in the Poisons Help group asked their colleagues after a child had taken a bite out of a bolete mushroom, what's the consensus? Can we eliminate cell-destroying toxins in this case? Thankfully, a bolete expert was there. Yes, this is a harmless species, they responded. So this moves to a reassurance job, the other responded. Ice cream, perhaps? Ice cream treatment seems proper for this case, the other responded. And that was the official consensus. As Ram Dass says, we are all just walking each other home. Don't we all have something to give? Don't we all need something from each other? Amen, and blessed be.
Hi, I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abby Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, and you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together, and we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, you can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abby just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.